This video is sponsored by Squarespace, the Antoine Dupont of website builders. Sometimes we all win. This Saturday gave us one of the great Six Nations encounters as France, a team built out of world-class ramshackle glory, boasting more talent than a circus staffed by clones of Gavin Henson, took on Ireland. A diamond shined until it could blind a rat. In one of the best games of rugby we'll see for, probably thinking of it, it'll probably just be a few months until, the World Cup. The best matchups in rugby tend to be those games where two teams either have exactly the same or polar opposite approaches to the sport, and Saturday gave us both. Two teams who approached a similar philosophy in completely contrasting ways. The turbocharged mechanical perfection of the Emerald Islanders coming up against the sparks of madcap genius, then nap in the afternoon, of Baguetteville, with Ireland putting themselves in position to take the Six Nations title after an unbelievable first half by both teams slid into maybe the most impressive half Andy Farrell's Ireland have put together to come away with not just a win but a bonus point. So, this game raises plenty of glorious questions, and in order to help me answer them, I was joined, very excitingly, by proper, professional, amazing analysis man Connor Wilson of the exceptional channel Wibble Rugby to dig in, because we have to ask, how did Ireland pull it off? Is something wrong with France? Is something very right with France, actually? Are Ireland as good as they looked on Saturday? And are either of these two teams truly favourites for St. Denis' big dance in late October? Me and Connor spent about 6 hours going over this game, so we're about to see as the product of that. If you were to rank Andy Farrell's greatest career achievements, World's former greatest defence coach probably sits somewhere between two-time Man of Steel and Wigan's #1 killer of Kestrels in 1998. But it was a factor that really made a difference on Saturday. Over the 18 months since Fabion's France rose to full power, 4 teams had previously come close to beating them, and 3, Wales, Australia and South Africa, put heavy defensive emphasis on Antoine Dupont, devising tactics to trap him or catch him out, whilst the other, Japan, had the genius ploy of arranging the fixture for a weekend where he wasn't available. And who can blame any of them? Lannemezan's nippiest number 9 is maybe the second most threatening force in rugby union to the homoerotic feelings that every player is pushing down, and has scored seemingly infinite numbers of tries from running this exact tracking line, getting ahead of the play and onto the shoulder of the ball carrier at the exact moment the tackle would come in. Almost any break becomes a try when Anton's on the scene, to be a freakish little hamster about it. France made 8 breaks on Saturday. That's actually more than they made a week earlier against Italy, but on only one occasion was a French player able to find support. Untermack sends Antonio here into heavy traffic pretty much halfway across the pitch, pretty much on the halfway mark, which splits the Irish defence, and as such leaves Ireland numbers short this side here. It's not a try-scoring chance, but it's going to give France a definite dominant carry and an opportunity to free the arm. Except, as Gelant makes that carry, watch Caelan Doris. He ignores where the ball has gone and just gets into Big Little Tony's way, blocking him running the line he loves so much. Against any other side, Ireland probably would have shut this attack down much more efficiently, Doris crabbing earlier and allowing Omani to drift harder, but against France, they know blocking the pass that could come is more important than dealing with the pass that already has. This is a very typical passage of France doing what they do, starting from their own 22, but whilst Marchant can get this miracle offload to Moefana, Byrne rushes into position to block Dupont, getting into his usual sporting channel, meaning this results in nothing but meterage inside their own half. Florent makes a decent carry, then Falatea explodes into contact, looking to free an arm for Dupont on the inside, but again, Murray wraps his ball carrying arm up. Untermack reloads and stretches outside, knowing McCloskey is his man, but really he's aiming to target Hansen, as Fickou stretches out beyond him onto the very outside. This is a common French attacking tactic, players taking wider positions as the play goes on, hiding themselves laterally in different groups, and making it impossible to predict where they're going to end up. But Hansen knows exactly what's coming. Ireland have done a great deal of homework, and just stands his ground, blocking as much space as possible, waving his arms. Just like last week, Keenan sees an intercept before the player taking it does and wraps onto the outside, the attack becoming the defence becomes... Look, it changes. Defence becomes attack becomes defence. For France, it all switches. The kick is a really smart option, but some exceptional goal kicking from Fickou gives Keenan the taste of his own medicine after what he did to Rio Dyer last week, yet leaves the ball here ready for Mac Hansen to pick up and score an absolutely certain try. This is going to be remembered as one of the greatest tackles of all time. Dupont's highlights reel is already longer than the Iliad, and yet it would feel incomplete without this. Mac Hansen left looking like he's running into an invisible wall in a video game, flailing as a text box tells him to stick to the main quest to be completed over this touchline. Because France posed such an all-court threat, Andy Farrell devised a new, bespoke defensive system to deal with what they offer. Knowing France kick more than any other side in World Rugby, Farrell opted for a 2 and 2 halves player backfield with both wingers floating back, whilst Keenan and scrum half Conor Murray played as full-on dual fullbacks. However, in situations where Ireland were likely to try and launch one of their trademark kicking battles where they're looking to kind of push you backwards, it wasn't uncommon for Ireland to bring Keenan up into the main line, such as here, with James Lowe and Conor Murray, the two players with the biggest boots, at the back instead. As such, because they'd be a winger short, Ireland deployed dual sex frog in their usual scrum half role, roaming around as a third centre, frequently filling in on the wing if the guy in 11 or 14 had gone into the backfield, just as most scrum halves do in this now post-Faf de Klerk world. Because McCloskey and Ringrose are independently so defensively solid and good at organising a line, used to doing it for their respective clubs, which is not something you can say when they're fielding two players from the same club with Henshaw at inside centre, Ireland would trust them to run one side each. Here, France are mostly set on the far side, and France so fond of that stretch attack, it's impossible to rule out the French going this way, so McCloskey stays on this side. He is the only back here, allowing the others to cover the more viable threats on the far side because they know they've got a really good defensive option here. However, there were faults in this Irish system, and France did a pretty exceptional job of exposing them. Repeatedly, France were able to hang exceptional kicks like this by Dupont, which brings Murray forward by miles, exposing how not used to being a fullback he was, the guy sprinting some 30 metres in order to knock the ball on. But the more pressing concern was just how easily France could get Ireland to disconnect. The French are a team who tend to work in one direction. It's built into the stretch shape. Just check this example, right? These are the positions of the French players during the ruck, and these are the positions once it gets wide. Everyone drifts towards the touchline, stretching the Irish D right out, and making it impossible for any wider players to rush up until that player has the ball. If France are going left, they tend to go all the way left before they even contemplate going right, so Ireland banked on that. If we return to that example, just keep an eye on the Irish defence. A normal defence wants to stay connected. Make sure you've always got the guy next to you, you've never got any gaps opening up. Ireland ignored that entire philosophy, that kind of thing that you're coached from like under 8s. The moment the ball went left, Ireland rushed left. A huge disconnect opens here, but because James Ryan had rushed so hard, not worried about staying in line, he's able to block the potential offload to Untermack, which is cool, but obviously Adam Beard would have taken the intercept and ran the entire distance himself, but it's pretty good he still blocked it. Or here, as Untermack throws the wide ball, McCloskey, once again covering the wing, is able to get across, but because he disconnects from his teammates, De Mortier is able to step and Damien Penaud his way out of tackles. Yet the desperation of this system allows Ireland to get plenty of people back to knock him off balance, allowing Hansen to finish him off. This system teething error also led to the most stressful moment of Irish disconnection of all. No, not Damien Penaud's miracle unbelievable try. I mean Andy Farrell's website. For on that long list of achievements, somewhere between dual international and one of the very few players to play both fly half and flanker for England in Rugby Union, and the only person who knows what Owen Farrell's favourite childhood toy is, ranks HTML expert. And yet, when his dial-up internet got disconnected last week, Andy found himself faced with a brand new world of web design. And so he went to Squarespace. Things are so much easier than they are of bloody HTML. Andy thought to himself as he added new features simply. This is so easy, he said out loud as he changed the theme without any coding or hassle. This is exceptional, he said, except in a northern accent, as he shoved a photo of Mr. Trunks onto the homepage for when Owen came clicking. This is so bloody good, Andy Farrell said repeatedly as he spent all night building his website. And if you want to follow Papa Faz's example and make an easy, beautiful website, you can by using the link in the description and saving yourself some money with the offer code SquidRugby. It's great and very easy. And yeah, the second most stressful thing that happened from this was the amazing try by Damien Penaud, a man who managed to convert Nepo baby attitude into a playing style. Having configured their entire defence to make sure France's attack was nullified, Ireland also altered their kicking to never give France an in. I've discussed at length recently how France kick, but the basic idea is they kick long, they want you to kick back and gradually force you backwards and hope to open up positions and disorganise your chase, granting them situations from which they can attack. So Ireland didn't let them. Here, France attempt to launch it long. They want to start a duel here, and Ireland just hang it in the air. And here, France hit it long, and Ireland just hang it in the air. And here, France hit it long, and Lowe hangs it in the air. However, France recover. They've officially made a net gain already. Dupont's able to get an offload away, but it's scrappy, and Penaud does a bunch of of bullshit before eventually France just take it in, they play a phase, they get into a better position to kick, and then Untermatt goes, right, we'll just forget that, let's just try that again. Keenan covers it, and sure enough, right on cue, Jam Brass Sex Brass sticks it in the air and sends his loyal minion Keenan to chase. As I say, France's goal is to find space to attack by disorganising a defence with those kicks. So Dupont looks up and goes, c'est brillant. I've been doing French on Duolingo. He considers kicking, but then slings it wide instead. But Ireland are really quick to shut it down. McCloskey's on the wing again, rushing up to pressure his man. Knowing this is a potential try-saver, he's got to get in early. The ball goes loose and Demotier has to just kick it away in panic. He's very much kicking on the back foot. This is a negative kick. And when Hansen recovers, he considers running it back, but Judas Sex Lunch instructs him, no, we're getting on top in this kicking drill. We're starting to win. Hang it in the air, we can finish them off. We've got to stay patient and stick to the game plan. And Hansen goes, hey, fair dinkum, I'll compromise, mate. I've also been doing Australian Duolingo, it's not going as well, and chips it. And sure enough, this gives France exactly the chance they were looking for, exactly what they want from these kicking exchanges. The Irish line is completely disorganised. Untermatt is eyeing up the kick, but changes his mind last second, right as Ramos also changes his position. This ball goes so wildly past Ramos that Ringrose rushes out of line, trying to make a huge hit, knowing he can break France here, maybe even open up a chance for Ireland to score. And the rest of the Irish system are rushing across, disconnecting from the men on their inside. Ramos slaps it on because of course he does, he's Thomas Ramos, and with Ringrose out the picture, it's easy for Penaud to shoot through the gap created by the disconnect. He draws Byrne and pops it to Jelonch, who considers the next pass, but seeing it's a prop, decides to go himself. However, so focused on blocking the French offloads, Ireland do not pay attention to the personnel. They get in position to mark both of these, but completely miss Penaud's wraparound line, Byrne having failed to put him on the deck when he gave the pass. The winger busts the initial tackles and can accelerate to the line. If anything, this try was the confirmation that the Irish tactics were working. It's an exception proving the rule, as the one time an Irish player doesn't stick to the game plan, France can rely on Ramos to do one prison-worthy thing and unleash one of their world-class talents to attack. And yet, it bore a striking similarity to some of the bespoke work Ireland ran with the ball in hand. The Shaun Edwards defence prioritises the fold, especially on their own line. Forwards in a Shaun Edwards team work really hard to get around the corner, away from their previous ruck, spreading out and working so hard like this. Especially off a scrum, forwards will just spread to the far side of the ruck to take position. So, in order to exploit this, Ireland ran the world's most basic, most simple set play. Murray hits McCloskey on the crash ball off this scrum 5, and as Van der Fleer cleans out, the Irish forwards fold onto the open side, on the far side here, into position to be marked by their French equivalents. Except Murray goes blindside. France are so hell-bent on getting to that far side. If Murray leaves it just a second, there's a window of timing where space will open up here. It's a ploy that Eddie Jones' England also ran when Shaun Edwards was with Wales. A back crashes up, in this case cock on a finger, and then once a second passes for the forwards to get onto the far side, but before one spreads back this way, England crash it up the opposite way. This one goes even more successfully, because when Murray does it, he only doesn't score because Romain Untermatt gets away with the most blatant yellow card offence imaginable. A try-saving tackle from a majorly offside position. He's nowhere near onside. However, whilst Murray can't get over, Ireland retain the ball, pick and drive again, and it takes both Marchand and Willemse to keep Beelum out, with Aldrit now stuck behind the ruck. Now, this is what Ireland are so good at. Similar to last week, check how Jobsworth Sexdog flops over the ruck to pin Flamont, Untermatt and Olivon all off their feet. This ruck is so wide, France need to bring their best tackler, Jelonch, round here to mark this kind of loose position, because anyone running with pace here is a potential try, leaving Fickou in the tight on the fringe of the ruck. Now, Gaël Fickou is an unbelievable defender, but he's facing something pretty remarkable. Andrew Porter's a really good try scorer, he's a good finisher, and he's in a good but standard position here. The great thing, instead of latching normally, Peter O'Mahony gets into the kind of position you use to shift a sofa on your own. It's shoulder under the arse, allowing him to slowly propel Porter upwards. A normal latch, O'Mahony comes in about here on the body, and Fickou can drop them both before the line. But this drive allows him to propel Porter upwards slightly so that he can drop on his own terms, only once he's actually over the goal line and able to score by dropping. It's a beautiful bit of detail, and I'd expect a lot of teams to be adopting this sofa drive technique by the end of the year, if they're not already. This might just be the first time I'm latching onto it. Ireland's first try was a thing of beauty. Not only is it immensely satisfying to watch, it's such a smart piece of play, gloriously well finished by the fullback who can claim to be arguably the form player in Europe right now. That's right, Emma Singh. Over the last year, the goal line dropout has become a real legitimate place to launch a strike move off, as all the pieces are either under your control, or if the opposition bungs it somewhere you don't expect, you get 30 metres to eat it up and align them. And that's just what Ireland do here. France put it towards the touchline, but knowing they want Doris to carry, they start him far back and low centre in field so they can eventually find him. Lowe's hair comes undone in the process, but he's so confident the move will work, he just walks off to fix it instead of even watching the rugby match he's playing in. Now, this move's origins go right back to the 90s, and Eddie Jones coached Brumby's team, but some 18 years later was revived, reinvented and modernised by Joe Schmidt. Ireland scoring a near identical try to this at Twickenham in 2014 through Hugo Keane in a previous life, Rob Kearney. And then last year, Australia under Dave Rennie and Scott Wisemantel revolutionised it again by utilising it off a goal line dropout. This move has become a bit like a game of that game where you all draw a bit of the next guy and then pass it along. Every team that deploys it adds a little bit more, something new to make it feel fresh again. So let's get into it. Why does this move work? Where does the space come from? And what have Ireland added now on top of the previous innovations? In 2014, Joe Smith's Ireland played this move off a line out across two phases. Jamie Heaslip carries, then a confusingly hairy Devin Toner follows up. Play heads back towards Heaslip, who's only just back up to his feet, meaning Hartley notices him late, and Kearney hits the line right as he turns his head. Because you're relying on the defender turning and reacting slowly, this is ideally run against a front row forward, and Smith's side were able to get into this situation over two phases where Hartley would have to fill in. By running this off a dropout, Farrell's side is able to target the situation from the off. All three French front rows are grouped here as they chase, and that's exactly where Doris charges. That's where Ireland want Doris running. He slips for Antonio, smoother than a sushi roll, and Marchand steps in, and this is where the important part occurs. There are 5 players involved in this move. 1 carries, 2 pass, 1 hits the line, but the other player's job is solely to be a shithouse. And if you're an Irish rugby team wanting someone to execute some shithousery, who in the history of the game could you possibly want more than Peter O'Bloody-Marnie? The key to this move working is here. No player behind the ruck to adjust, and only 1 on the fringe you intend to attack. So, 2014, Peter O'Marnie sees Joe Launchbury setting to do just that and just shoves him over. But how a man grows in 8 years. In 2022, Peter O'Marnie dives instead on top of Marchand to pin him on the ground. He's not getting up, not contesting, not filling on the other side. This means Willemse has to watch Beelum with Murray running the world's most obvious loop. Everyone saw this coming, causing Jalanche to sit up and take notes. Gary Ringrose starts from deep. His one job, the one thing he wants to do, one thing only, is distract Gael Fickou. If France's defensive captain spots this, he's close enough to shout, cancel this out, keep his teammates in check, close this space. But Ringrose just holds his eye. And check how deep Keenan comes from. He's back on the halfway line, the furthest back Irish attacker, completely hidden from view. This is a shift from Australia's approach last year, who had to fly half on the other side of the ruck and then wrap around. But the one major change was how Ireland baked support runners into the move. Where the Wallabies had one runner who was easily picked off by the backfield, and then McWright, who goes full O'Marnie, involved in the ruck, then gives Vincent Cock a quick little shove before sprinting downfield. Ireland adapted every dummy runner, every additional body beyond Keenan and those involved in the ruck, into a support runner. Keenan was able to finish this himself because there's so many options this side that Untermack pulls away in case he has to tackle one of those instead. But Jacob Seck-Stockdale has run through on the other side as well. The move is so smart, so tightly constructed, that there's no way whatsoever any team not called Wales could bomb this. It's an amazing move with superb detail and endless, flawless fail-safes built in. Providing Keenan hits his line and O'Marnie flattens some prick, Ireland are going to be up 7 points. An additional note, Australia used this to great effect against the Springboks last year, a team who are of course in Ireland's pool at the World Cup. Now it's very possible this was either a trial run of a move that they're planning on running in the future against a different foe, or they're kind of double bluff, hence playing it so similar to how Australia did against the Springboks. They want to catch their eye. They weren't thinking about this when they go into that game. Schmidt varied this particular attack by running different versions, such as this one against Scotland, and it's possible Ireland is trying to draw South Africa's eye to this play so they can hit them with something similar to the Scotland move, a different version, in a few months' time. With these teams playing the last meaningful games they'll face before the World Cup, we're in prime rehearsal and test and trial phase for strategies, ideas they may want to implement once they get to France. And it's left France in a very unusual place. An awful lot of their structures have changed. A lot of France's regular tactics were benched on Saturday. Maybe France's go-to to generate momentum, a tactic Connor over on the Wibble Rugby channel coined as the submerger, where forward after forward follows in a lateral line line of pick and goes, usually with about 1 billion offloads to draw bodies and utilise their size as well as their skill set together, was largely benched. Over the first 73 minutes, France did not set to run it once, though 2 of their best attacks came from messy ball, accidentally resulting in the players being in position to run something very similar to that play such as here. Then, with less than 10 minutes to play, and right after the Ringrose try that took the game seemingly beyond them, France go back to their old friend the Submerger. And this happens. Fickou picks and goes and can slip the ball to Taufifenua, who runs the simplest version. He just launches his bloody big body at Van der Fleer, his sole goal not to make meterage, but to drag him away from Antoine Dupont. He's trying to open up a gap here with the contact on Van der Fleer, knowing an arm will be free. Dupont darts through, and if Rossburn doesn't get a toe to his kick, he may just have created the try that gets France back in it miraculously with 5 minutes to go. The French handling has been slightly off the last couple of weeks. More passes than usual going to ground and players not nailing their lines because they're clearly trialling new things. A second watch on Saturday showed, even though this was their strongest 15, I don't think France were deploying their all-or-nothing tactics on attack. And there's a very decent chance these two teams could well meet for a reverse fixture in a potential quarter-final this year, and France may just have seen enough in their own performance to go into that with a great deal of confidence, despite the eventual scoreline. But perhaps the most exciting and revealing moment comes here, because I think France tried out a major innovation that will not only be huge for them, but potentially any team that catches on going forward. This is potentially enormous, because France launched a set play off the opposition's ball. Labler take the ball in off this dropout, because hey, that's all the rage. They play set plays off dropouts now, they play a few phases, and then Untermax sets up to kick. This seems pretty standard, you know. France kick a lot, they set up to kick, fine. Except their setup is completely different to their usual kick chase. Olivon and Flamand set as their primary chasers, with Moefana following, and Untermax sends it high, but notably further than he usually would. There's no chance to get players under this, but that's because France have no interest in getting players under this. The kick comes down exactly where Keenan is standing, give or take a couple of steps, meaning he's taking the ball stood still. He's not coming forward onto this, he's got no momentum, nothing, and it gives Olivon a perfect target to smash. Moefana and Flamand tear over the top, Flamand driving upwards, and once Olivon gets back up to his feet, he can drive the lock over the ball as well. Their only competition initially is a scrum half, though Ringrose gets around quickly as well, so once Penaud gets involved, it's pretty easy to get over the ball, and it looks to be secured, except Kelleher does a really great job rescuing the situation for Ireland, so Marchand has to come in and secure the ball for France. And despite the fact they only won the ball, half a second earlier? France were already set up to play a pre-planned, pre-called strike move once the ball comes out. The best ball to attack off has always been turnover. A defence set to attack is the easiest to break down, so France devised a tactic to guarantee turnover ball. They kick, they let Ireland take it in deliberately, and then they win the ball back at the breakdown by sending the two main counter-ruck threats in the team, Flamand and Olivon, over the top, whilst the other players get in position to attack. It's genuinely quite genius stuff. However, because Marchand has had to come in, and he's not grouped by anymore, he should be about here, it means Omani is able to fly up without the threat of that tip-on, without, Marchand there to watch as well. He's only got one man to watch instead of two, and Henderson can then shut down Fickou, because he knows it's clearly going out the back there if Omani isn't taking his man. That one body costs France a second in attack, but Fickou, being an impossibly intelligent rugby player, he darts back in towards the ruck. It means France can get a second shot at this. Jilanche's clean is brilliant, and means only one of the Irish forwards previously on the far side, having tried to retain their ball, is able to fold around. James Ryan here. And France run the same move. Byers here again with a tip-on option with him this time and sends it behind to Untermax. Ringrose spots the enormous overlap they have and flies up, allowing the Quiffmeister General to flick it on to Penaud. But the flaw in the Irish machine rears its head again. Hansen has to stay out, but it's okay because Peter Omani is flooding across so hard that he disconnects. It's an easy step for Penaud, and even when Murray catches him, he's in the same situation, disconnected from his fellow defenders, allowing Penaud to spin out of yet another tackle. However, right before the line, who should get back and make the tackle but the only Irish player able to fold around to the near side of the ruck? The only player who, not having to run this off first phase, got into position. James Ryan making a try-saving tackle in an effort so impressive you'd be wondering why Adam Beard's playing in green now. France get turned over on the next phase, but if Marchand hadn't been required to win the ball, or if Kelleher hadn't stepped in, or even if James Ryan had been half a second later onto the other side of the ruck, France just scored a try to put them ahead in the second half. It's a tactic they tested once, but it's an unequivocal success with enormous potential to open up the game going forward, and it could be huge for this team who love to play unstructured rugby to be playing off designed turnovers. And yet, whilst they can experiment more with the ball in hand, I think the chances they were doing that in defence were quite slim. And that's what should really give Ireland hope, because they took France apart with two exceptional tries, one in either half. Ireland targeted Thomas Ramos all game, knowing the French fullback has a habit of doing risky shit that should put him in jail just because he has Untermack and Dupont to bail him out 90% of the time, and this may be the cleanest example of the game. They repeatedly kicked to him on kickoffs, to the point that France had to move an entire lifting pod to be just in front of him for the kickoff after he does this. Similar to his effort on Thomas Williams last week, Mac Hansen can get in Ramos's face and charge the kick down, and when the kick comes down to earth here, Antoine Dupont is forced to make the tackle. Ireland play another phase in field, and then once Dupont is back up to his feet, they head back that way. Jup Sexwagon delivering Josh van der Fleer right into his skull. However, as Ireland send the attack this way, another important thing happens. Gael Fickou floods round to help him out. Fickou and Dupont are, as I've alluded to, France's main defensive organisers. Fickou, the man who leads the line, and Dupont, the guy who fills any gap and organises the forwards. So Ireland want them out of the game. They want them on the floor or out of the way. Both immediately get back up to their feet, but Sex Poodle runs in and just grabs Fickou, holding him back, and Murray sends a third straight runner at Dupont. Toulousian Jesus gets back up to his feet slowly, but Fickou has filled in on the side as Ireland play one more simple phase, and that's just when Junkyard Sexplant feels it's time to pull the trigger. The referee firmly looking the other way, Mac Hansen runs over to Fickou, just gives him a wee little hug. This is so far away from the play, even the most stringent TMO in the world is never calling this back as obstruction, but it does mean that France's main defensive captain can't jog in behind and reload on the other side. He can't get round in time, leaving Roman Untermack acting as both centres, operating as a 13, a position he's never played before, from a 12's width as the ball comes out. Sexwanker sends a pretty dulled pass on to Porter, so Flamand feels no particular rush to smash in until it goes back to Keenan. From here on out, all Ireland want to do is isolate Untermack. James Ryan barrels into Moafana, knocking him back and disconnecting him from the 10. Keenan holds the ball until Toulouse's second Jesus has planted his feet and flicks the pass to Ringrose, who just straightens, eyes on Penno, who's coming in to help his nonchalant, bequiffed mate. Ringrose times it well and it allows Lowe on the very touchline to eat up the remaining metres before jammying his way over the try line. There's plenty of debate over whether or not this should have stood as a try, but ultimately the lead-up play by Ireland was genius, and the TMO made the decision based on the information it was given, and frankly, I think that's a much more interesting thing to discuss. The lead-up play, not the TMO. Point is, talk about the rugby. As was the similar work eventually used to create the decisive try for Gary Ringrose. Genius, that is, not rugby. It was also rugby, though. The idea is very similar for Ireland. The team approached an attack so smartly and steadily. For a team so built on playing fast, there's no lack of patience. This attack comes from very steady places. Rossburn was excellent off the bench, fantastic, making sure Ireland never forced anything against one of the best defences in the world and applying pressure, knowing they could reset the attack whenever he needs it. Likewise, Craig Casey was great. This is a favourite moment of mine. Ethan de Montier makes a great impact this ruck. He almost turns it over, but as Casey jogs back into position, he glances at the 11 on the back of the guy almost winning this ruck and goes, Irish on Duolingo goes very granular, and without looking just slaps the ball into the corner where he should be covering. And the eventual winner comes from another corner hugger from Byrne. Off the line out it leads to, France form a more and give Dupont a better platform to clear. And whilst this is a good kick, he doesn't find touch and it allows Hansen to charge it back. And from there, Ireland play a pretty fantastic 19 phases. It's controlled, disciplined and accurate, and it's also very, very smart. But mostly, it's bloody long. It's really long. A sentiment I think nobody shares more than France flanker Anthony Jalonge. After 13 phases, Ireland set to run a particular play from their big book of phase shapes. It's very simple. It looks like this. 10 in the boot of a pod of 3 here, 2 forward runners here, and a back in the boot behind. It's not enormously threatening at first, but if the back, in this case Hansen, can beat his man, a try is on. It's a low-risk play with high reward in the small circumstances where it comes off. There's maybe a 10% chance it'll work, but in that 10% you're going to score. But here, Penno reads it instantly, and Jalonge fires in to shut it down and make the tackle. It, kind of half works. Hansen evades the first tackle, but there's still a guy around to finish him off. So Ireland work back the other way with another few crash-ups. Bang, bang, bang. They're all decent and pull France about a bit more. The defence is stressed a bit more. Fickou and Dupont are pretty well spread here. And when Fickou sees the picture around him, it's pretty decent. Penno and Moafana are the wrong way round for their system, but Penno has played 50-odd games of professional rugby at centre, the most recent just 2 weeks ago, and Moafana spent most of last season on the wing for France. They're fine. Except That's to ignore the details. Ireland set the same shape as earlier, and Craig Casey throws a superb pass. It's quick and takes out every defender inside and including Taufifenua. Penno and Fiku read the ball going out the back, but Conan makes a lovely nudge and he's slow into position, whilst Jelonch on his inside is even slower. France have just defended for 18 phases, right? And in that time, Anthony Jelonch has made 5 tackles, missed 1, 2 counter-rucks, and was the initial contact on the maul as well. That's 8 physical efforts in just over a minute, and the 71st minute at that. Even an uber-fit workhorse like Jelonch, who's one of the most fit and physical players on the planet, is gonna get a bit knackered by that, and he's slightly more lethargic than usual tracking across. However, Fiku makes a brilliant read, this is really great, and an even better tackle, getting Aki to ground immediately. No chance of a pass, and then he rolls himself out the way, allowing him to get right back up to his feet. And, knowing how Ireland value quick ball, France decide they need to contest the ruck. Except, Penno is the closest man and Jelonch is tiring, so the winger goes in, and then the expert counter-rucker behind him actually knocks Penno off balance. If this is, say, Jonathan Dante playing in the centre position, France likely turn this over. If Jelonch is a split second faster, if he's had to make maybe 2 tackles instead of attempt 6, he can at least slow this down and allow Penno to drift out and cover the wing. But with both of them in the ruck, and neither of them quick enough to make an impact, Fiku sees it coming. He gets on Doris immediately, desperate to prevent the pass. He even tries a beautifully audacious, deliberate knock-on, but it's all in vain. Doris throws this expertly. This is a brilliant offload with 2 hands, and Ringrose has found himself against a much smaller man in Jalabert. Not used to playing fullback, rushing across, and not prepped for the tackle. Ringrose fends him with ease and parades towards the corner. Taufifenua can't stop him. Ringrose is going to win the match for Ireland. Now, this was a truly remarkable, endlessly memorable match, the sort that makes us all excited for every weekend in February and March every single year. It was a match packed with excitement and endless quality that reminded us of the romance of the game. And it was a game me and Connor spent 6 hours on Zoom going over in detail. Such was the enormous impact of everything that happened for us on Saturday. This was one of the big games of the year. But whilst this obviously sets Ireland's title hopes up incredibly well, I actually think this loss was incredibly important for France. And not just for the various tactical reasons I listed earlier. There's not a side that has ever won the Rugby World Cup without first going through a great deal of heartbreak. The All Blacks bombing out in 2007, the Springboks team that lost to Japan in 2015 that went on the worst ever run in the years following before winning it in 2019. England were embarrassed in 1999 and then constantly missed out on Grand Slams before winning it all in 2003. The 87 All Blacks had to convince New Zealand to fall back in love with the jersey after rugby hit an all-time low in the country. For some time, I've had a gut feeling that France are better shouts for 2027 than this year's title, that everything's been kind of too smooth up until now and they've shown too much. But having been thoroughly exposed, taken apart and embarrassed on the second biggest stage as possible to play rugby in, might help them not just reflect on their own weaknesses, realise where they've gone wrong after being shown it by Ireland, but also find the extra emotional 2% it takes to push yourself, to take yourself over the edge. It's something that perhaps can only come when you've experienced true sporting heartbreak and you know you never want to experience it again. And as for Ireland, there was no caveat, no downside or potential shortcoming attached to this win. This was quite simply exceptional. This was really great. The questions will continue to be asked about whether they can keep it up to the World Cup, but whatever, who cares? For today, in the context we're currently being presented, Ireland were amazing, and this might just have been a game where everybody won. Thank you for watching that. I hope you enjoyed it. Thank you especially to Connor of the Wibble Rugby channel, also has worked professionally as an analyst all over the field. Amazing, loveliest guy, amazing analyst, knows more about rugby than I ever will. Remarkable. Go and check out his channel if you haven't already. Doesn't upload that often, but when he does, it's gold dust. It's amazing stuff. The plan had been we were going to properly collaborate on this, but that wasn't possible in the end. Something hopefully we'll do one day. We'll have, both of our voices in a video. That'll happen eventually. But thank you for watching that. There's more around the Six Nations. I'm going to cover as much as I can feasibly. It took all week to make this because it's a lot's gone into it. But I'll see you soon for more of the rugby.